why don't we do it with Fez? We'll give Fez's pick,
Sure.
and we'll do it for that one. So, Fez, what's your first pick of the 4?
San Francisco 49ers under 11 wins.
You're relentless with that.
So I got to tell you real quick, this is the ultimate simplicity of handicapping. All right. I want to play NFC teams under. All right. I want to play unders in general.
Why is that?
Because the NFC teams have 9 road games. All right. So the schedule is slightly stacked against them, and everyone who makes the strength of schedules never reflects the fact you got that extra road game.
Now,
for the
NFC.
NFC.
Strength of schedule account for if the game's home or away?
It doesn't. They just take your 17 opponents. Nobody does it correctly.
That seems bad. All right. Yeah. I guess we'll fix that. Let's
all right.
do that for next week.
Then the second aspect is historically, if you did nothing but play, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, I apologize, but play every team that's lined above 10 wins to go under, this has been very profitable over like the last 7 years.
And remember now, there was a long period that I believed the same thing. Then there was about 3 or 4 years that they all went over the high totals. Now it's kind of reversed itself.
Exactly right. So there's only 2 NFC teams total above 10, and one of them's the Eagles, who I'm convinced money is going to keep coming in on the over. So if I want to bet that, I'm going to bet it in September. That leaves me with one team, one NFC team above 10 that isn't going to steam up, and that's the Niners. So I'm playing the Niners under.
Now, the rationale why high totals go under is, in general, casual fans are drawn to winning teams. Thus, there's a little extra money on them. Thus, it's inflated.
Yes.
So, Mackenzie, we're going to give you a chance to rebut. Do you like the over with San Fran?
I did last year.
Well, that's interesting, but this year.
I kind of do. And Fez asked me pre-production, I'm like, I'm neutral. But if I'm honest with myself, I think Purdy's still underrated. You know, he's not the 30th best quarterback where all these people rank him. I think
let's be honest. This is I just read a lot about this surgery. Like, if he would have had to do the full Tommy John, and they didn't know till they opened him up, he would have been like not thrown until October or something. I mean, it's very lucky that this new experimental surgery maybe could work. But there's some real uncertainty. Wouldn't we agree with that?
Sure.
And then the alternative is Sam Darnold.
I think the alternative's Trey Lance. I don't think anything's happened since week 2 of last year. You guys think I'm crazier and crazier. What's happened since we talked week 2 of last year when he played one game in one quarter?
Listen, your uncle, as most people know, your first biological uncle is Mike Shanahan. Thus, you are first cousins with Kyle Shanahan. You have a family connection. But I think that causes a little bias, yes, and we accept that. You're not biased, well, maybe against LeBron, but otherwise you're not biased. But can't you agree that being somewhat on the inside, not that you guys were hanging out every day, but somewhat on the inside, you know the truth of a situation that's talked about amongst the coaches, amongst the administrators, is different than what the public hears.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is people all have their confidants in the press. They whisper it to them off the record, and then those people eventually start to say what they believe, but not attributing it. And it seems like the narrative of the John Middlecoffs, who is very connected to the 49ers, for example, and those kind of guys, is that Trey Lance is, at this point, a throwaway. That it's like they are so disappointed.
I haven't gotten that impression at all.
Well, no, you're not listening.
I guess not. I mean, I'm watching... or I'm listening to the most recent reports on spring training camp.
No, we're not talking about what the shield. We're not talking. Yeah, doesn't that? Think about this for a minute. How bought in? How much Kool-Aid this mother has had to drink to think it's good news that entering year 3.
I mean, he's still.
Mackenzie, are you allowed interrupting?
Sorry about that.
I'm gonna. Fez, how good-natured am I being right now?
Extremely.
Oh wow. But still, you know when someone doesn't want you to make their point, they want to interrupt and stop the valid point. All right. Fez, let me ask you. I won't turn his mic off. Let me ask you. Doesn't it seem weird that entering year 3, that the big exciting news is during a boot camp of like a week he learned to throw? Your number 3 pick quarterback that had 3 first rounders.
By year 11, he'll be reading zone coverages.
I mean, McKay, let's be candid for a second. It is a little concerning that the big news is he now knows how to throw, maybe.
Well, that was always his biggest question mark.
As a quarterback, that's a pretty big question mark. I think he's rock solid except for that throwing part. And by the way, he doesn't run very well.
We got a lineman. He's learning how to block.
Go ahead, Mackenzie.
I think if you ask Kyle Shanahan, you can get Tom Brady in his prime mentally, reading plays, everything else. But he's the 28th best thrower of the football, sign me up. I think he's ready to go with that.
But except it's the opposite. It seems like the lack of experience. Do you get a sense that the Trey Lance is like above and beyond as a guy who's reading coverages and such?
Yeah, I think that's why they drafted him, and I think that's I think his football
you don't
IQ
think you don't
is
think
a strong point.
And you could tell that at North Dakota State.
Yes. I mean, that's what Greg Zuerlein talked about pre-draft. Remember that he doesn't know me. He doesn't know the 49er. He's talking about reading NFL-style offenses, calling the coverages and everything, calling what the front line.
In Division II.
He was advanced at that.
Let me ask you, Scott. You try to stay pretty neutral on these goofy things. Mm-hmm. How crazy does that sound to you? That Trey Lance's main selling point was his intellectual abilities.
Yes.
Crazy.
A little bit.
All right.
Explain that.
Dude, it's because he was a physical marvel, they thought, with hardly any experience. So they were betting on raw talent.
All the money came in on Justin Fields, who's more athletic, to draft him. And I said, no, I don't see that at all. I see unproven, unpolished guy that they think has top-end potentials in other areas besides just athleticism, because they could have gotten that in Justin Fields.
Well, I think the Justin Fields thing, in hindsight, you do realize that Justin Fields has a ton more value right now in
sure.
trade. Okay. So, though I'm not an optimist for Fields, but at least a minimum, it seems like he could be an amazing halfback. I mean, not that he'd ever do that probably, because you feel like you've given up on your dream or whatever. Who knows? Listen, we've litigated this at length. I would say this in general, especially in the last year or so, I am very not impressed. I'm very optimistic about your reasoning ability. I would make the case his NBA performance has been really shockingly good, meaning it's like this guy has an instinct to handicap the NBA. And I say that as sincerely as I can. Your thinking is so muddled on this Trey Lance, in my opinion. And wouldn't you agree, of all the people you know, if you had a category of those whose logic and intellectual rigor you respect, that I'd be on the list.
High on the list.
All right, thank you. So if I tell you that I think it's very fuzzy, you got to pause a second, right?
Sure.
All right, I think you should. I think you should write like a report up on this and really think about it, because my understanding is they can't get a 3 for him. They want to get rid of him for a 3, and no one wants to give up a 3. Not 3 first rounders, a 3. And why bring in Sam Darnold? And let's think about this. Sam Darnold is supposedly the savior here if Purdy has physical problems. That backs your pick up pretty strong.
People have been talking about him for MVP, 50-1, Sam Darnold.
But who would they bring in where it's like, oh, well, they obviously trust Trey Lance a lot because they brought in X?
Well, I mean, let's ask ourselves. Trey Lance is making like $11 million because, I mean, if you're the 3 pick and you're in year 3, you start making real money. I think it's like 10 or 11. Who has a third string? Let's assume Trey Lance is second. Who has a third string quarterback making as much as Sam Darnold? He's probably the highest priced third string quarterback in the NFL. So that seems to imply a lack of confidence, doesn't it? Because let's be honest, the 49ers don't have a ton of money to be spreading around.
His cap hit is $5 million.
That's a lot for a third stringer. I mean, like, remember, like, Andy Dalton, when he went to Chicago, he was like a premium backup, was 10. So, I mean, like, you can get a really good backup. I mean, what I'm saying is there was a bidding war for Sam Darnold. Now, that might be insane, but there was. All I know is this. I think the 49, I think you got a good pick here, because I don't love it because it's moved a half a game, but because it was 10.5, right? Or 11.5, however.
Yeah, there were 11.5s. Yeah.
Yeah. But it does, I do think the variance on I think San Fran could win the Super Bowl. If Purdy comes back and he's 100%, and that,
sure.
There's some issues on the line too. I mean, they lost McClintock, or however you say his name?
Yeah, right tackle.
And they haven't done anything with him. Right, they haven't really drafted anyone high. I mean, they didn't have high draft. They picked
elevated the 6th offensive lineman.
Yeah, which now means you're thinner. I mean, it's a problem. Who knows what's going to happen, though, right? But I think that they might have the best offense other than quarterback. In fact, I think they clearly have the best offense other than quarterback, right?
They get a full season of McCaffrey now.
Yeah, I mean, I think but I also think right now, if somehow Purdy goes down for the year, I think their over and under would be like 7.5 games. I mean, if Sam Darnold is starting, like, what is the over under with Sam Darnold or Trey Lance starting? Let's call them the same.
Oh, it's still 9.5.
9.5.
Well, then I'm making the
8.5.
biggest bet on my. That can't be. What team has ever had a below average quarterback that's been supposed to win more than 50% of their games? And Sam Darnold is not
The Titans.
but if you actually look at the numbers,
Yeah, Tannehill's good. Yeah.
I mean, like it never happens for that.
You're right.
I mean,
let me think. I'll come up with some.
Yeah,
Jacksonville, Blake Bortles.
But they weren't supposed. Remember, they had one winning year, and they weren't supposed to be near that good that year.
But I think the year after they're aligned at 9.5.
Except Blake Bortles had people. First of all, Blake Bortles was probably I don't know. I think he was the 20th best quarterback. Probably it was a financial thing where they signed him to a second contract. But I don't know. He had a good year that year. Let's just say this: Sam Darnold does not have it within his ability to have a year like Bortles did. At least as far as I've seen. Mm-hmm. The real question is if you had. Here's the last question. If you had a choice between Sam Darnold starting the whole year or Trey Lance with your under bet,
Sam Darnold.
No,
Sam Darnold's better than Trey Lance. I feel. I mean, Trey Lance obviously has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah. I think you're actually right. Is if I had like a bet where the variance mattered, I would want Trey Lance because I think
Super Bowl bet.
I think we know how the top line of Sam Darnold,
right,
and it's not good at all.